If you've never heard of Thomas the Tank Engine, you've either never been or never known a child. Thomas is quite simply the most famous locomotive there is. He and his toot-tooting railway friends were the creation of an English country parson back in the 40s. Half a century later, they're still a runaway success, with 10 million books sold and a television show seen around the world. Come with us now on a journey into the time-warped world of Thomas, his friends, and those he's made rich and famous. Welcome to the mythical island of Sodor, the green and hilly home of a little blue steam engine called Thomas. He and his friends have become heroes to millions of children around the world. But let's be honest about it, quite a few adults love him and his sunny world as well.
I love the skies. Do many people say that to you?
All the time. Yes, they do. Designed specifically by my art director, who is also a pilot. So he's got a lot of knowledge of skies.
Because it's obviously drawn by a man who knows his clouds.
He does. He's up there all the time, yeah. But we have a passion for the island of Sodor, that the fluffy clouds are very important, friendly clouds, which match the character of Thomas.
Film director David Mitton loves his work. Who wouldn't? But the truth is that it demands an almost fanatical attention to detail to make the Thomas the Tank Engine television series the full steam ahead success that it's become.
It is exhausting, creatively, as well as the action of the trains and getting them right, the engines in particular, because you've got a complicity of electronics in there, the eyes working. If we get one detail wrong in foreground, we get a lot of letters.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
The inspector stood on Edward's front, holding a noose of rope in the crook of the shunter's pole. He was trying to slip it over James's buffer. The engine swayed and lurched. At last! Got him! He shouted. He pulled the noose tight. Gently braking, Edward's driver checked the engine's speed.
In the making of the films, all the engines are treated very much like actors, and they behave like actors, and they really steam up and they go to work.
Don't you hate Britt Allcroft? She used to do what I'm doing now. Indeed, she was making a documentary about steam trains when she got the idea of buying the television rights to the Thomas the Tank Engine children's books. And now she's a millionaire.
I looked in many different directions for the cash. In the end, came back to my own doorstep and our local bank manager. But that involved mortgaging the house.
And for the price of that mortgage, in television terms at least, you own Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yes, yes.
A good investment. Fluffy clouds, sunny skies, a lovable toyland. And even if behind the scenes it really is a multi-million-dollar business, there's still plenty of room for eccentricity.
It's eaten into my soul all the time. Even dream about it now.
Dream about it?
Yeah. And the funny thing is that the dreams are generally sometimes could be better than the movie. Because I'm the engine driver, if you get my drift.
As he rumbled over the bridge,
It's true.
he would see
You can't spend any time around Thomas the Tank Engine without getting seriously sucked in. It's an infectious story. And like all great children's stories, it started out as a tale told to a small child. Wait a minute, I think I see the kid over there now. His name is Christopher Audrey. His father was a country parson who made up the Thomas stories for him half a century ago. The years may have passed, but whoever grows up when it comes to steam trains.
I think the fascination for, certainly from the children's point of view, is that they can actually see it working. They can see the steam, they can see the rods moving, they can see the wheels moving. You get in a modern locomotive, a diesel locomotive, you press a button and it goes brum, and hopefully it moves. This you can actually see in action, you can see the power and feel it. And there's a sort of distinctive smell about a steam engine too.
Like Wind in the Willows or Alice in Wonderland, the Thomas stories, first told to a child, were later published and were hugely successful. Of course, Christopher grew up wanting to be a writer, but not just like his dad. He decided to write detective fiction, but it was clear he really didn't have a clue. The detective novels were never published.
You see, I wanted to write, but I was also determined at that time that I didn't want to write about Thomas the Tank Engine.
Because you didn't want to be in your father's shadow.
Exactly.
When his famous father, the Reverend W. Awdry, grew too old to write, the still unpublished Christopher decided to give Thomas a go. He wrote a new series of Thomas stories, and they were, of course, a runaway success. At last, Christopher was on the gravy train.
I would have liked to have made my own way by not using his characters. But the opportunity was there, and, you know, I'd have been a fool to turn it down, wouldn't I?
Absolutely. It's made you a very wealthy man, but it hasn't really changed your life.
Well, I hope it hasn't. I don't feel very wealthy.
His father is rich too, but it's even harder to tell. This is the home of the Reverend W. Pretty modest for a man whose writings have earned reputedly more than £10 million. Only the name of the house, Sodor, Thomas's Island, gives any clue about its famous occupant. What no one told me was that these days the Reverend W is a very grumpy, bedridden old man. And he's got a terrible cough, but at least he's still able to smoke.
So, can you tell me where and how it all started?
Oh, this is the story I've been telling for the last 30 or 40 years. I'm sick of it.
Oh dear, this really isn't going very well at all.
But you're all behind the times. My books have been bestsellers in Australia, New Zealand, for the past 30 years.
Maybe we should have done the story 30 years ago.
Yes, you should. Not waited until I'm in my dotage.
The newspapers say you've become a multi-millionaire. Have you become a rich man?
Well, they're talking rubbish.
So you didn't make £10 million from royalties from the television series?
I've got no idea how much.
And what about that television series that earned him all those royalties that he doesn't seem to know he's got? What does the creator of Thomas the Tank Engine think of his invention on television?
Like the curate's egg, good in parts.
And what parts aren't good?
First two series were all right. They more or less stuck to my stories. But then the success of them made the producers get what I call big-headed. They showed their lamentable ignorance.
But they've fallen into error.
Yes.
Thomas thinks no engine works as hard as he does. He loves playing tricks on them, including Gordon, the biggest and proudest engine of all.
Some of the credit for the Thomas success must go to the voiceover man, former Beatle, Ringo Starr, who gives us the drum.
People were waiting at the station just before the bridge. They wanted to see what would happen.
The rest of the family were in the sitting room one night watching television. I was going past the door and I heard this voice.
Henry was feeling stuffed up.
And I thought, that's the voice for Thomas's Storyteller. And I walked into the room and Ringo Starr was being interviewed on a chat show. So I wrote to him and we met. And I said, I think you've got the perfect voice to be Thomas's Storyteller.
Soon they could see the boys, and they all had stones.
If you follow the plot, then you know all about plucky little Thomas who shunts the carriages for the big engines like Henry, James and Gordon. Then there's the nasty Diesels, really the only villains on the happy island of Sodor.
He roared, gave a great heave.
And of course, overseeing the whole railway and its operation, the Fat Controller.
Silence! Snapped the Fat Controller. Percy and Duck, I am pleased with your work today, but not with your behaviour tonight. This is my railway, and I give the orders.
Here for one glorious day on a little branch line in the south of England, Thomas fans and railway buffs have joined forces to recreate, full-scale, the world of Thomas the Tank Engine. And one of the lucky enthusiasts, a local businessman, actually gets to realise his lifelong ambition to play the Fat Controller.
So how much is this a fair dinkum, Thomas?
Very much so. It is very, very much so. If you get a picture of Thomas and look at this, it is carbon copy.
And what's all this muck that I've got all over me?
Well, unfortunately, that's
There's all this stuff. and will it come off?
That's Australian rain.
What is it?
Yeah, it's only muck from the boiler.
Well,
Bit of water.
Your trains are very messy, Fat Controller.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'll give my slip.
The Fat Controller originally was introduced in the 3 railway engines as a dig at pompous officials whom I abominate.
I've never met on any story as many eccentrics as I've met on this one.
Well, all railway people are eccentric. You've got to be involved like we do. Who would come down to this place on a Saturday afternoon for no money on a gorgeous day and work on steam engines?
And get covered in
covered
oil
in,
and
covered in
soot.
oil and everything else, play on the track, paint coaches, and just generally enjoy themselves. Cup final day in May. Where are they? They're all down here playing trains. It's in the blood.
Now, if you haven't noticed the shortage of girl trains on this line, others have. Lately, there have been shock accusations that Thomas is blatantly sexist. Well, it happened to Noddy, and it happened to Bill and Ben, the flower pot men. So is Thomas the Tank Engine now to be derailed by political correctness?
Hurry up, you.
What does Thomas think about this?
Thomas's opinion hasn't actually been asked, you see, but I have plans for that.
So there's trouble down the tracks for Thomas?
Who knows? I don't think so, really.
Meanwhile, back at the station, it's the adults who seem to be having all the fun. It makes you wonder whether this whole Thomas the Tank Engine business really is just for kids.
Look at the way you're dressed. When are you going to grow up? You're a middle-aged man.
Middle-aged man? Good heavens, sir, I'm not a middle-aged man at all. Never. Never. I've been like this since I'm a kid. I've loved the train since I'm a little boy, and I still do.
What do you want children to get out of Thomas the Tank Engine?
Entertainment.
No more than that.
That's what they were written for.